Welcome back and welcome to our final session of our Smart Mobility Forum. And it's all about data, this particular session. And we are going to have a presentation from IBM, Mark Thurman, who will also be moderating our panel. So I'm going to invite Mark to come on stage, and off you go, Mark. Now's your time.
Now it's my time?
Now's your time.
Hi, everyone. I'm Mark Thurman from IBM. The only thing standing between you and cocktails is me. And I'm going to take my time. No, actually, I'll move through it quickly. Thanks, Shane. Thanks, Jackie. Thanks to the GSMA. It's really great to be back seeing human beings and faces and three-dimensional people. So just to the GSMA, it's been a tough 2 years. So thank you. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. Oh, with all the builds, great. Okay, that's me and my digital twin. So I've been at IBM for about a year. If you want to come meet me and learn more about my background, I'm happy to talk to you about it. One of the other things I do, in addition to leading Connected Edge strategy at IBM Consulting, is I'm the chair of the Connected Things Conference at MIT. I saw an MIT vest on over there, so if you're in town on November 22nd, let me know and I'll get you in. The session abstract was, I think, rather interesting. What I took from the abstract was that there's a massive market. The market forecast is for over $500 billion in the U.S. by 2030, or excuse me, $500 billion USD by 2030, with the key points of impact to include the continued rollout of 5G, as we heard from the prior presenters, shared mobility, and EVs. But ultimately, it's all about the data. Why are we connecting these things? I used to say that IoT in particular was about managing and monitoring and maintaining control and gaining insights of the data. But now we see that over 90% of the data is really never even used or captured or analyzed. And most of the data, most of the value goes away almost immediately. So at IBM, we have a research group called the Institute of Business Value, IBV. They've got some very interesting market statistics. Again, the value of the market is about to rise to $220 billion. Security and privacy, which is a theme we'll talk about certainly on our panel, but also in a few more minutes, are key to auto OEMs. Connected car is the largest IoT vertical. So this is why we're having this discussion right now. But what is the conversation? The conversation includes not only having sensors, and I'll go slowly if you guys want to take pictures of it, but also bringing external sensor data. IBM bought the weather company a number of years ago, so we can bring in external weather data. A lot of the other presenters talked about other sensors that inform driving decisions, both for drivers and in the case of autonomy. But what are the other pain points? There's also other technologies like in-cabin AI. Actually, there's a company that I know that spun out of the MIT Media Lab, not to pick on my MIT friend, called Affectiva, that does something very, very interesting. It's now called Smart Eye, I believe, that senses if the driver is sleepy or if there's problems, if the Uber driver is under attack by a mean passenger, or if there's a child left in the car. And we're starting to see internal and external things occur, but the real key from my perspective is that connectivity remains ultra important. What we've also discovered is, as it says there in the far lower right-hand corner, and sorry for the eye chart, is that consumers will switch car brands for the number of people willing to switch car brands for connectivity has doubled. As I said, connected car is the term I've generally used, but maybe we should really be using cognitive car. And the survey question So these are some research surveys that we took. It starts to ask about future capabilities. What future capabilities are you interested in? And it's kind of interesting. So the other thing that's occurred is what brand matters in mobility. Is it the car brand? Is it the hyperscalers? Is it the telco? Is it the voice rec brand? Is the car really just a blank slate? 48%, based on the survey, say that in the new world of mobility services and autonomy, the brand may not even matter. But if the vehicle has become more than transport, our study indicated that the key uses are still weather, traffic, and wayfinding and navigation. There are more choices for infotainment, and that's gained traction. As an EV car owner, I like having, as one of the, I think the Porsche presentation earlier talked about, I like understanding how much power is left in my car and where I can add energy and how many plugs are available. So it looks like we're actually cultivating a data sharing ecosystem. The auto OEMs are looking to smart mobility as a revenue driver, and the data is valuable to a number of stakeholders. So our study has shown that a major source of service revenue for auto OEMs is the data. But what data really matters? I think it's this data. And it's really all the sexy stuff like maintenance and diagnostics and other insights. And then you have companies like Ford and many others, but this is the screenshot I was able to pull, that are trying to learn more by equipping developers with access to vehicle commands and data and APIs. So Wendy, I think I ripped off some of this information from AWS, the McLaren stuff from reInvent 2 years ago. So what's the current state of play? As I understand it from speaking to auto OEMs and several of the major MNOs, a normal US auto data plan is roughly 10 megabytes per vehicle per month. But other things are using that data too. Satellite radio, telematics. OTA updates are actually going to generate huge bursts of data. More sensors, as you can see from the example with the McLaren car, the more sensors they put on it, the more data. Makes perfect sense. Autonomy, more data. Software-defined vehicles. I think that might be our first panel question is, what is a software-defined vehicle? We were just talking before the session. So if 10 megabytes per month was the baseline, how much more, where will this go to? How much more data will be consumed? I believe the emerging model is 1 to 2 gigabytes per month. I also am aware that doing any of these OTA updates, both for conventional and EVs, is just going to drive that up quite a bit. So a lot of the operators are talking about multi-petabyte plans for their auto OEM fleets. And then who pays for the data? Can you imagine a world where you might get directions via a sponsored data plan that takes you maybe a slightly different route, but takes you down a row of restaurants or past a place to go shopping? Or can you help me find a place to charge my electric vehicle? Cars can and do consume a ton of data. They process a ton of data. And as I said earlier, both consumers and auto OEMs and the auto OEM executives that we've surveyed are very concerned about privacy. Lastly, who owns the experience? This was the topic we don't want to talk about, but maybe we will. But who owns the experience? And who gets blamed if stuff goes bad? So J.D. Power, who does an awful lot in data and analytics in the automotive industry, indicated that the biggest complaints were all around connectivity. Connectivity can alter the user's perception of the vehicle itself. It's also very important for all the smart mobility services in the ecosystem to deliver excellent quality. I think We had a prior panelist talking about quality of service. And eSIM's a very interesting tool that I know there's a lot of work being done, a lot of discussions certainly here at the conference. So I want to bring up the panel where we're going to introduce ourselves and have a little bit of a chat. Come on up. My goal was to really set the scene with my little talk just to begin our panel discussion.
Oh, do you want some water?
No, you didn't take my water. I had mine up there. So let's go down the line and just do a very quick introduction. I think we're not sitting in the right order, but I'm not going to make anyone stand up. But Wendy, why don't you go first?
Good afternoon, good evening.
Can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Wendy Bauer, and I lead the global automotive business at AWS, based in the United States in Detroit, Michigan, and thrilled to be here with you today.
Benoit.
Afternoon, evening. My name is Benoit Joly. I'm managing the business for Wejo. Wejo is a global data processing platform for automotive. So we process more than 14 million cars real time from 22 OEMs worldwide. So we talk data with the OEMs. That's our language. We talk data processing and data.
Steve?
Yep. My name's Steve Schwinke. Nice to see everyone here today. I'm with Sibros. Sibros is a company based in San Jose, California. We are a product company that specializes in software to enable over-the-air software updates on any type of mobility product, data collection on mobility products, as well as sending remote commands to products. Prior to this, I was with GM OnStar for 22 years, one of the original OnStar guys, and I was talking about connectivity in vehicles before, and people looked at me like I had two heads at the time when we first started. So,
And interestingly, we have 3 Michigan natives on the panel, all the way from Motown. So I think, let's kind of kick it off with the very first question that we talked about as we prepared. This is a telecom conference. Why are we talking about cars? Who wants to jump in?
I can jump.
Let's see who gets their mask off fastest. Okay, Benoit.
It's all about convergence. We see that telecom people have been considering car as a nice and must-have. Today, most of the telecom guys are kind of a dumb pipe to the OEM industry, and they want to get smart. And 5G is giving the opportunity to simply connect the car world and the telecom world together, because the car is becoming yet another IoT object with characteristics, and autonomous vehicle, IoT, is all converging. So for me, convergence is what brings me here, actually.
Well, as I think I may have mentioned, and then I think Steve wants to go, the largest vertical in IoT is connected car. Steve.
I was just going to add one more thing too. The OEMs have been coming to GSMA, Mobile World Congress, for a long time, as well as CTIA before that, because we recognized that the telco industry was so vital to us. I mean, it's complex, it's hard to deal with, managing your vehicles, trying to get them down to a single SKU for your telematics device and have them operate globally. So we would come to these shows to learn about your industry, and now we're talking to you about our industry, which is a great convergence.
Wendy, do you want to jump in?
Sure. I'd amplify what my fellow panelists said today. I think from what we see at AWS really amplifies the point on convergence. The industry, the automotive industry, it's not new for them to be talking about onboard processing, offboard processing. What does this relate to edge technologies? What we're seeing today, however, is definitely an acceleration of our automotive customers experimenting with 5G capabilities now that low latency is available. So when you talk about anything from manufacturing to connected cars to autonomy, those requirements are imperative. And so we do see customers accelerating experimentation and looking to bring them into production more than they ever have before.
Perfect. So that leads me to my next question. What steps can the telco and the cloud industry players take to address the challenges of the new connectivity needs? And again, note that this is an explosion of data. It's no longer a couple, I mean, what was it at OnStar originally in megabytes a month? And then we'll go to, or kilobytes a month.
I don't even, mostly it was about voice. Did I screw this up?
You just have to avoid the mic, yeah.
There we go. Mostly it was just about voice services for a long time, and then we introduced turn-by-turn data, and it was maybe 20, 30 kilobytes to download a route. And today, and I liked your number of 10 megabytes per month, we're doing vehicle tracking, breadcrumbing with 30 megs a month. So it's amazing, you know.
It is amazing. So I think, you know, again, the question of what steps can the telco and the hyperscalers, that we've got one here, or representative from one, what can they take to address the challenges of these new connectivity needs? What do these guys need to do? More plumbing?
I'd stress the word collaboration and move faster together. When you think about the role that telco can play in the cloud partners together in helping automakers solve what it means to move processing from onboard to the edge to the cloud, and doing that in a seamless way and faster, and giving the end customers choices. Choices that they can choose where they process what application based on their specific use case with their specific requirement. Choices is imperative, and how we enable that decision making and in flexibility is key.
Steve, you want to?
We on? Yeah, there we go. I was going to add, I think, of three things on what we can do together. The first is on autonomous vehicles, the development that's going on there. Focus on delivering a quality of service. I mean, that was one of the biggest challenges we saw, was getting that guaranteed quality of service. So I think we heard a little bit about it today with slicing, network slicing. Can we do something in that area? And then I think of 5G. This question always comes up in 5G. I think there's two use cases on the bookends. Millimeter wave is really important for us, especially to do software downloads to the vehicle. If you're talking about an infotainment update, you don't have a lot of time to do it unless you're doing it over multiple trips or can drain a battery. So let's get more deployments of millimeter wave. Let's get the OEMs to have that, and I can push a 500 megabyte download in 10 seconds as opposed to 20 minutes. And the other is the C-V2X technology for life-saving activity. I mean, let's embrace that. Let's go for a single standard, and let's push for standardization around how to make our roads safer for everyone, not just the drivers, but pedestrians and bicyclists and everyone.
So more plumbing.
Yeah.
Benoit?
If I may add to that, I mean, I think we need to remind everybody of the basics. It's an ecosystem, and data is not the end goal. Data is just a currency that makes everything flow together. And what most of the telecom guys and OEM think, oh, it's data, I can handle that. But actually, they don't realize that data is not the end goal, the use case is the end goal, and processing that amount of data to what you say to perform the right use case is not something to be taken lightly. And usually, they try first, twice, and then realize they need support from much more specialized companies or specialized players that can tell them not to play with data, because everybody can play with data, but do it in a way at that space, that scale, that turns into real-time insight and use cases. And that's a complex job, and I think they don't realize it at first glance. They do it only after trial and error phase.
So it's like what Wendy was saying. It's a collaboration. I won't use the word journey, even though I know you like that word. It's a collaboration. So what happens if the connection fails? Whose problem is it? Is it the OEM? Is it GM, Ford, Audi? Is it the MNO, the operator? Who do you call if the experience isn't seamless?
From my days at General Motors, they'd always go to the dealership. It was always the dealership's problem, right?
Was it a GM problem?
No.
Or was it a Verizon problem at that point?
It was always very complex. Sometimes it was actually in the PSTN, it was somewhere it's really hard to troubleshoot some of these network issues that are out there that can take place. And that's why we need that better collaboration, is to troubleshoot those problems that can occur. A lot of times the data for connected vehicle flows takes a different path than it does for a retail phone. And so people, they go, my cell phone's working fine, but my vehicle is not working. Well, that's because it has a different SIM and it's going through a different core, and people don't understand that, but they still look at the OEM as the faults. And so.
And I think the prior presentation we had from Vodafone and Porsche was a great illustration of how the plumbing is different for the car sim versus, again, your smartphone sim. But I guess the question, maybe Benoit, over to you. How are the OEMs going to get value out of the data?
Well, it's a big question. So first, the data has value for themselves, and they don't realize it because when you know exactly how your customers are behaving on the driving score, you can do a better marketing, you can do better dealership management, you can do better CRM. You can conceive cars in a much better way when you understand the driving guys, for example, driving behavior on battery. So, in fact, what is very interesting is that OEM don't look at their data as a way to instruct their own business. So that's the first element. Obviously, data has value for all the surrounding ecosystem. Smart city, insurers, advertising companies, retailers as well. So we can imagine that people think about data monetization being, oh, I'm going to sell the data to someone else. Actually, no. It's all about creating value, insight that will simply help your own business. And OEM can do a lot of very good stuff with their data that they don't do yet at this stage.
Andy?
What I would add on to that is we often talk about the value of data. Sometimes what we struggle to realize getting there is to get the value out of data, you have to be able to access or get insights, which means you have to access your data and unlock that data. And so we're seeing a tremendous shift in automotive companies, both OEMs and tier suppliers and partners, historically being challenged with data silos in their organization, even within functions and line of businesses amongst themselves, let alone across their own enterprise. And we're seeing a massive shift of enterprise-wide data lakes inside of companies, but even now from OEMs and tiers, when you start talking about use cases like warranty, right? So when you think of through your entire supply chain is where you really get the most valuable insights, and how do you bring that to life and enable that?
Steve, you want to jump in?
This is an area that I'm really passionate about too, and your answers are spot on. You just got to start with the internal value that this data creates. The automotive industry is actually going through this seismic shift around new entrants into this marketplace. VinFast, we heard from today, 21 months, and they're in production with vehicles. We see startups in the EV space because the EV vehicles are actually much more simple to build, and so we're seeing a lot more of them. And the companies that take advantage of connected vehicle data to understand how their products are performing and being used, and use that data to improve their designs, reduce quality issues, improve their warranty, are going to be winners. You can save hundreds of millions of dollars every year by embracing using this data, containing defects, manufacturing defects. I've seen it over and over again. We've done studies. 80% of defects that people return to the dealership are detectable through software and data collected from the vehicle. The OEMs don't act on it. And so you have to use that connected vehicle data to be the winners in this place, because the barrier to entry for new entrants in this market is greatly reduced.
You know, I've often said that cars like the Tesla are really a rolling data terminal. And in the case of Model 3, it sort of is. Mm-hmm. There's not much in it. There's just a screen and processor and a network connection, and they're also pretty fast. But is that true of, I think, all the other vehicles you guys are seeing, Benoit?
Well, it's true, it's not true, actually. So, well, it's true because OEM want to go into this power, kind of computer on wheel. Software-defined vehicle, you mentioned it, is all about putting a computer on wheel in a very traditional way. But it's very interesting to see that all these new players are just starting with a software-native approach. As you say, Tesla has built a software and a car around. Most of the OEM has built a car and tried to put a software in, which is a very different approach. So when you think software first versus hardware first. And based on this approach, we see that the OEM were going faster are the one, as you said, that change the architecture more dramatically, faster. They don't try to cope with the legacy. They try simply to go to the next stage much more rapidly. That's the only way to simply outrace competition in the short term.
It makes sense. So I guess the question, and maybe this would go to Wendy, How much processing do you really need to have in the vehicle? How much could be done at the edge in the cloud? Obvious question, but
I wish there was a single answer.
but are you seeing certain trends?
I think there's no question we're seeing the trends of every OEM, no matter if you're a traditional auto or a new OEM. Everyone is asking the question of the balance, the right balance between what gets processed on the vehicle, what gets processed at the network edge, and what gets processed in the cloud. And we're seeing OEMs experimenting with all variations thereof. And again, I think a lot depends on the legacy by which they're coming from, how fast they can move, how large the OEMs are around the world, and the scalability that they're trying to turn over millions versus hundreds of thousands of vehicles contributes to that. And so the answer is we're seeing all of it, and we need to be prepared to support them, regardless which OEM we're talking about.
Okay. Thank you, Steve.
Yeah, I was going to just say one more thing about this is that, you know, for me, the software-defined vehicle is becoming more about the abstraction from the hardware to the software development that takes place. And we're starting to see OEMs actually put more compute than they used to put in the vehicles. Like there was zero leftover compute because that tier one supplied both the software and the hardware, and they minimized what they put on there to just get by, to make their margin on their cost. We're starting to see OEMs put more compute, and I like to think of the day when our cars will become more valuable after we've driven them for a while, and we've added more features through software onto these platforms, as opposed to a declining asset. It actually gets, it gets more valuable over time because we're adding more features through software, and that's one of the things our company does, is deliver software updates to any ECU in the vehicle.
And that's sort of the Tesla theory. It gets better over time. Right. So you're seeing that across other OEMs now. I don't want to only use Tesla as the poster child for these things. Makes total sense. How about eSIM in the vehicle? Not to get real specific, but we are a telecom show. Any thoughts on that, Benoit? Value of that?
Right. Yes. So I think it's back to who is paying for what, Is it your personal car? Are you paying as a consumer for the connectivity? Is it a telecom operator? Is it the OEM paying? I think there's a whole battle about the cost of data, which is actually the cost of infrastructure to build data. When you purchase your car, you pay for your car. You pay your personal infrastructure. Well, interestingly, when you purchase a connected car today, you don't pay for the telecom costs. The OEM is paying for that. And I think there is a whole balance. Yeah, there is a whole big issue right now about who is paying for what in this convergence between telecom industry and the car industry.
Makes sense. Wendy, do you want to jump in? No?
The only thing that I do talk to a lot of OEMs about connectivity needs, right? And so I always start with, instead of the technology, what are the use cases? What are you trying to do with your connectivity? Are you getting to a single SKU? What markets are you going to operate in? How much data do you expect to consume? Are you going to be reselling like Wi-Fi data? Understand the business need first, and then have the technology solution come second. And that's where I see the eSIM market, is that they're not exactly sure, is it a technology that I need to think about, or am I really solving a problem that's out there? And it's going to vary by OEM what exactly they need from the eSIM community and what they're trying to do with connectivity on their mobility devices.
I think it makes sense. I think because we're coming up against our time boundary, Steve just had the opportunity to deliver his closing comment. He just didn't know it. So, Benoit and then Wendy, where do you think things are going? Smart mobility. That's the topic from the abstract.
Well, we have a motto ourselves, is smart mobility for good. I think we should not forget the for good, because at the end of the day, it's not about money. It's not about cars, better cars. It's all about what is useful for me. What is it for me?
What does that mean? Again, we have enough time to flesh that out.
Yeah, for good means for us that it serves the purpose of the consumer, of the society, of the city, of the green. So we want to not simply make money out of that. We need to bring a benefit to all the society, all the consumers. If you simply are here for making money, your business case will collapse at some point. It needs to bring value. It needs to bring value as a person, as a community, as a city, as a country.
I like that. Wendy.
I love his comment on value and
You can't steal it.
the purpose
can't
of what
steal
we're
his
doing
comment.
here. But I think one thing I would also stress I didn't get a chance to say a minute ago was we often, when referring to the automotive industry, think of the OEMs. I think we have to challenge ourselves that there are many customer persona groups. The end customer, the customer is the OEM itself, the tier suppliers and partners. There's many consumer group or customer groups that we need to think of, and to the point of use cases, it's all about the value. And so I think, you know, obviously we're at a telco show, and so when we think of the role that the telco providers can play along with the cloud providers, along with the auto industry, no matter where you sit in the value chain, it's imperative that we collaborate faster together, and the role of 5G is not even questioned anymore, particularly around low latency applications and lighting up manufacturing, supply chain, connected car. The value is everywhere. So a lot of opportunity we can do together.
Perfect. Join me in thanking my great panel and thanking Shane and Jackie. Thank you very much. Shane?
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mark, Steve, Benoit, and Wendy. I'm sure that was a great session. I hope you all got something from that. And thank you for attending our Smart Mobility Summit here today.